a new ESPN story. It's from Seth Wickersham, Don Venata Jr., and Jeremy Fowler, and it goes into Bill Belichick's job search and why he didn't get hired by any of the teams that were looking to replace their head coaches this offseason, in particular, the Falcons. And so what was interesting that we learned in this story is that Belichick thought that he was getting the Falcons job. And then it turned out that not only did he lose out on it, that the Falcons internally voted on their top candidates, and he didn't actually make any of the decision makers top three. So he felt after he met with Arthur Blank that it was his to lose. And then when it really came down to it, the executives there obviously preferred Raheem Morris, but also were just a lot cooler on Belichick than he thought they were. And according to the sources in the story, part of that had to do with a conversation between Falcons owner Arthur Blank and Patriots owner Robert Kraft, who are close friends, in which Kraft told Arthur Blank, according to the sources in the story, not to trust Bill Belichick and that he couldn't trust Bill Belichick. The Patriots have denied this, have said that, Kraft wouldn't have employed Belichick for as long as he did if he didn't trust him. But this was pretty juicy, I thought. Stephen, you were actually the person who texted me the link to this story this morning, and we decided we needed to talk about it. So what did you think of all this?
Yeah, I was very surprised by the details in the story, even though we've kind of gotten the big picture idea of how it went down in Atlanta, even a month or two ago. But my biggest takeaway was this league is just overthinking itself with the Belichick thing. And I think this is proof that they look back on that Patriots dynasty and pick out the wrong reasons why it was so effective. The idea of the Patriot way is really blocking Belichick from getting another job, it feels like. Not just the idea that the Patriot way was the reason that they won and that's no longer a thing and he can't replicate it. But it feels like everyone expects him to come in and institute the Patriot way. There's only one way to win a football game. And I really don't think Bill Belichick believes that. We've seen him win football games in many different ways. And according to the report, he apparently was willing to work under a GM and work with the GM. So I think it was Belichick being hey, I promise I'm not the guy you guys think I'm going to be. I'm not going to be that guy. I just want to come in and coach football. That's all I want to do. And they're nah, you're Bill Belichick. You're going to do the Bill Belichick thing. And if I was Terry Fontenot, and the Ringer was talking to another guy that did quarterback rankings and film breakdowns and also happened to write about March Madness, I'd be no, I don't think you should hire that guy. Honestly, if you're asking me, in my opinion, you shouldn't hire that guy. So I don't know. It just seems like the league overthought this, especially with a team like Washington, who has this new regime coming in from a different sport. They have had success, although limited success. The 76ers have never been to an NBA Finals. But they have their way of doing things. And I think they're set in their way. And they're this worked in basketball, so this is how we're going to do it in football, which would be a major red flag for me. And then there's David Tepper, who apparently the reason why he wasn't interested because he loves to pour over the data and criticize play calling. And he wouldn't be able to do that with Belichick.
That was incredible. If anybody hasn't read this story, I encourage you to go through the actual text for no other reason than when they get to the part where they're just laying out sort of what went wrong with Belichick's candidacy for every job. They get to the others and it was just David Tepper didn't feel like he could have a meeting where he criticized all of Bill Belichick's in-game decisions. Sorry,
that's
buddy.
why this explains so much. It explains why he hired Matt Rule. If I wanted to have a coach I could punch down on, I'd hire a bad one.
PFF Dave over there. Is that what you're going to say, Austin?
Yeah, PFF Tepper, PFF_Tepper out here wanting to criticize. No, that's also just scared to compete. I don't think I could have a meeting with him because you'd show up unprepared and he'd know more than you. That's it. Yeah. That's the problem. I think that my takeaway from this is one, if you're thinking Washington has overthought anything, you're crazy. They've underthought it. Okay, they're underthinking in Washington. I think that the strong GM stuff that's in there, they talk about how Washington really believes in this strong GM system. It comes from the NBA, it comes from what the owner has done with other places. And it's bringing Belichick in, even with the strong GM, is such a huge improvement over the coaching staff that I think they have brought in with Dan Quinn. I think that the Washington piece is underthinking it. I think David Tepper is going to David Tepper in Carolina. With the Atlanta stuff, I agree that Fontenot, the GM for the Atlanta Falcons, was probably I don't know if I want this guy in here. He's someone that has shown he can strong arm. I also think it's scared to compete with Belichick. You're going to go toe to toe with this guy. It's tough. And Belichick can get into a room and say, I understand that I've come in a little power hungry at times, and I had full control in New England. I don't want that anymore. I'm here to, just coach. That's all I want to do. I've said that about meetings sometimes, where I'll say, hey, you guys run this thing, no problem. I'm all over it. I'm staying on mute. I might turn my camera off. You guys lead the way. I catch a little miss up, like, hey, I was thinking this. Maybe we could try. And like that, to me, is like what would happen as soon as they make one decision he doesn't like. Which, like, is not a fault to Belichick, maybe not a fault to me, but it's like, he's like, I want to do this right. I think I know how to do this right. And he's going to be like, he could say in a meeting room all day long, that's like, dude, don't worry. Fontenot, you do your thing, man. Bring in all these guys. I'm all for it. They make one little misstep. Belichick's going to grab the reins of this thing and try and whip it the whole way as he wants. And then when you factor in, which I thought was an important part of the story as well, this thought that he's only got maybe 2 or 3 years left. And Blank, I think very fairly being like, I don't want to do this again in 2 to 3 years and reshift the culture and reshift everything. That I think actually has weight, because not even just throw out the, like, he wants 15 wins and he's quitting. Like, he's 73 years old at the start of next season, 72 at the start of this season. Yeah. He is old. And I do think that conversation, or at least whether it was with, the other executives with the Atlanta Falcons or even just internally with Arthur Blank, I do think actually holds weight, where it's like, okay, we could do 2 or 3 years of Belichick with the, concerns that we have, and also with the polish that he brings, and obviously all the experience that he brings, or we could try something fresh and try and bring something in. I don't know. I kind of felt both sides. Now, I feel like it's funny that Kraft is denying that he said anything candid about Belichick, but what I honestly think is happening is, like, this is how I feel about Belichick. This is, like, obviously what happened in New England.
Robert
And
Kraft called
Bill
Belichick a pain in the ass in a documentary like 2 months ago.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure he said some stuff to a close friend.
I think so too, but I feel like he's just being honest. I feel like it's stuff that Belichick would say about himself too, probably. I don't know. I do feel like the Panthers thing makes no sense. The Washington thing makes no sense. With Atlanta, I don't know. I do really like Raheem Morris, and I actually am kind of convinced that he came in there and was like, dude, I have ideas. I'm ready to bring it. And I don't know. I think it's tough. I think Belichick. My favorite quote of the story was when someone said, like, a source of a source said, Belichick in the meeting with Arthur Blank was asked by Blank, why haven't some of the guys that you've coached under you developed into good coaches? And he's like, yeah, those guys are better soldiers than generals. Just literally just shits all over everyone that's ever coached under him. He's like, yeah, those guys are soldiers. Sorry about that. Yeah. No.
Well, I mean, what else are you going to say? Like, you're going to mount your defense for Josh McDaniels' head coaching resume?
Joe Judge, Bill O'Brien. Yeah, probably not.
Those guys just didn't get enough of a chance. It would have worked out in the long run.
Give me one more year with Joe Judge. I'll figure it out.
I think Robert Kraft is getting way too much agency in all of this, frankly. And like, yes, it's interesting and juicy that he had a conversation with Arthur Blank about this. I think owners bitch to each other all the time. People in the league bitch to each other all the time. That's pretty standard operating procedure. What I think seems to be going on is a combination of, it feels like there's an undercurrent of just like, Bill Belichick at this point is the Patriots organization's sloppy seconds, kind of. And any team that might hire him knows that to some extent you're hiring him for the resume, and you're never going to get the credit. Like, he's never going to be yours. You're never going to actually get the shine that it feels like you should get for hiring Bill Belichick. It's really just, if you want to hire that guy, you're hiring football acumen. I think that's being underrated right now. I think somebody would have, if not hiring him for the actual position, I mean, for goodness sakes, a couple other teams should have interviewed the guy. Like, I like Harbaugh with the Chargers, but I've just got to say, the fact that the Los Angeles Chargers didn't take the opportunity to be like, hey, Bill Belichick, why don't you sit down with us for 4 hours and tell us how you would fix our cursed football team? Like, that to me is always going to feel like a missed opportunity, even if you don't go and actually make the hire. It just seems like teams look at him as somebody else's guy. And I think owners have an aversion to that because they just sort of want the credit. And two, I think it's just laziness. Like, you read into all of those different examples, and it's just the theme through all of them is just change is hard, and Bill Belichick might ask us to change things. A lot of those teams shouldn't be too scared of change.
the Falcons thing with the contracts, when Rich McKay, when he was asked, like, why don't you put like incentives to working out around the facility during the offseason, Rich McKay is like, oh, we just don't do that. We never done that. And by the way, Rich McKay, how is this guy still, how is he such a loud voice in the room still? This guy's been living off the 2002 Bucs defense for 25 years. Enough. And that wasn't even him. It was Tony Dungy and Rod Marinelli. Get out of here. And ironically enough, Raheem Morris is on that staff.
The thing, one, Nora, I think that's super well said. I think that you're 100% right. I think owners looking at him as someone else's guy and the sloppy seconds piece, I think is apt. I think the other piece that they're thinking about is you're getting a 2 to 3 year commitment from Belichick. Max, right? Maybe 4 if he stretches it, but like 2 to 3, maybe 4 from Belichick. You're also either getting him and you're giving him full reins, and you know what that comes with, right? There's positives to that, there's cons to that. Or
can I say that I believe him when he says that when it seems like he's saying that he's not requiring full reins? Actually, Bill Belichick, as the leader of everything in Patriot land, Bill Belichick ran an organization where a lot of subordinates did not necessarily feel empowered or let into the rooms where decisions were made. But when he did give someone responsibility, I don't know a lot of anecdotes about him like being a super micromanager. He doesn't give people a lot of leash, but the things that he asks people to do for him, I think historically he kind of lets them, he picks his guys and then says, you know, you run, with the exception of the defense in New England, just because that's his thing. Like Josh McDaniels got to do what he wanted to do on that offense. Matt Patricia kind of did too. You know, like there's not a huge amount of micromanaging, I think, that's in his DNA. It's more being very judicious about who's let into the room, which I guess is a subtle distinction. But I don't, if he's developing this reputation for not letting people do their jobs, I don't think that's right.